Welcome, everybody, back to the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Jesse Collings, joined, as always, with my co-host, Jason Ounpraseuth. Jason, how are you doing today on a very wonderful New England October Friday?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Just found out from our last episode, we talked about how it was supposed to be our 1 year anniversary. Did more digging, just looked up our first episode. It was actually around this time was our first episode on the 10th of October. And so we're pretty much, nearly like 2 days before our first anniversary. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I know. I did the same thing after that because I went back to the because when I uploaded this one, I looked at the YouTube channel. I'm like, when was the first video uploaded? And I was like, we're a little off. I a little overestimated them. But yes, this will be our 1 year anniversary show. And what better way to talk about our 1 year anniversary and talk about a promotion that we have not talked that much about since we started. And there are reasons for that, as I'm sure we will discuss. And that is Ring of Honor, a company that has been around for, I believe it's 19 years. I think next year will be their 20th year in business, and a really pivotal company in the modern history of wrestling. The wrestling totally looks different because of Ring of Honor. Somewhat kind of similar really to ECW in the 90s, where stuff you first saw in ECW, you later saw in the WWF. And Ring of Honor, which obviously has a lot of similarities to ECW, a lot of the stuff you would see on Ring of Honor, you see now today in more, in WWE and certainly in AEW. But the company over the last few years has been, I think, lacking buzz and lacking general public interest. And we're going to get into some of the reasons for that. We're going to get into some of the pros and the cons of a Ring of Honor, what's some strengths that they have, what are some weaknesses that they have. But I wanted to pose this question to you, Jason. Like, what is Ring of Honor to you? Just like when you think of Ring of Honor wrestling, what do you think of?
I would say just a lot of nostalgia I have for Ring of Honor. It was one of the first promotions I watched outside of WWE when I was, growing up. When you grow up, you just know that WWE has this monopoly on wrestling, so that's the only wrestling that you know. But then you discover, oh, there's more wrestling outside of WWE, and Ring of Honor was one of those. And of course, you discover guys like Kevin Steen, El Generico, all those kind of guys. David Richards was big during the time I was watching, and so a lot of nostalgia for Ring of Honor. And they always were a mainstay. You always felt like you had to bring them up whenever you're talking about, the big wrestling in the US, whether it merited that or not, especially nowadays, which we'll get into later on, is a different story. But still, you always felt like you had to include Ring of Honor in these big discussions about US wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, when Ring of Honor first started, it was totally focused on like what if we had a wholly serious approach to pro wrestling? What if we did it similar to some of the Japanese promotions? What if we're going to do this thing where everyone shakes hands, the code of honor at the beginning of each match? We're going to have, eventually they started incorporating, the pure rules. They wanted to do independent wrestling and wrestling in general in a way that was super serious and, sports based. And over time, while they've added more sports entertainment elements to it, I still, when I think of Ring of Honor, I think of the serious approach to pro wrestling. I think of technical wrestling. I think of mat wrestling. I think of submission wrestling. And you can look throughout history. You can go with, Brian Danielson, who was, in the first ever Ring of Honor World Championship match. And you can look at Jonathan Gresham today, and you can see the veins from that image of pro wrestling still existing. But I do think that the company in general, it's really strange. I don't want to say they haven't evolved, which is a hilarious pun, but they seem to have lost their place in the professional wrestling atmosphere. And I don't know if it's really something that they could have prevented, because I think you look at AEW. And you obviously look at the core of AEW, you look at the Elite, and you look at Cody Rhodes, and you say, Ring of Honor had all of those guys not that long ago, and they didn't, they had a chance. Like this gets brought up a lot. Like they had a chance to become AEW, but Sinclair Broadcasting, who owns Ring of Honor, didn't want to spend the money. And so the Bucks and Cody, they went out and did it themselves. And that's always kind of like written. I feel like that's a repeated history, is that Ring of Honor could have been AEW, but they didn't want to be. But I think there are a lot of factors that's prevented Ring of Honor from achieving the success that AEW has had, even if Ring of Honor had wanted to spend the kind of money that Tony Khan would want to spend. And I think that it's kind of an unfortunate circumstances for Ring of Honor that the formula, serious pro wrestling in the United States, pushing people who are smaller, technical wrestlers, that kind of formula ended up being adopted by bigger companies in WWE and AEW. And much like ECW, the appeal of the company becomes significantly lesser when you're seeing bigger companies use the same kind of elements to their production. And I think that's ultimately what Ring of Honor has found itself in. And I don't know the way out of that problem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for Ring of Honor, like you said, like it symbolized serious technical wrestling. And during the time they were getting their rise with like Samoa Joe as, their longtime champion, it contrasted towards guys like John Cena, who was, that sports entertainer type wrestler. And like you said, like there wasn't really anything Ring of Honor could do about it, because those guys like Samoa Joe, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, they would eventually, move over to WWE and, incorporate that Ring of Honor style into mainstream wrestling. And so that's what the Ring of Honor style wrestling is pretty much mainstream now. Everyone works that similar type of style. Ring of Honor, they brought in the Dragon Gate guys. You could watch, old Shingo Takagi matches in Ring of Honor. They're bringing in Kenta Kobashi as well. They're bringing the Japanese style wrestling, making that, bringing that over to the US, something WWE, obviously very much, again, contrast to them. But now, that's becoming just more mainstream. Now AEW can just bring in Japanese wrestlers in anytime they want. And so, just eventually that stuff becomes more mainstream, especially as, the popularity of different companies have grown. And, Ring of Honor, a lot of their business programming was syndicated television. That was a big part of, their TV, quote unquote. They didn't really have a weekly television show. They just have, their syndicated broadcasts, and then you can just watch it, especially nowadays, you can just watch it on either on their website or just on Fight TV. But still at the same time, like, they never put a focus on weekly television. I think at a time, I think it is still Monday nights, but still, like, it was never an intent, like an impact where they wanted to compete with Monday Night Raw, but still, like, they still had it on Mondays for Ring of Honor television. But still, like, the big appeal for Ring of Honor was always the pay-per-views, either Final Battle, especially Final Battle, but yeah, like Best in the World, once they start working with New Japan, you have War of the Worlds and all the other global Honor Rising and stuff like that. And so that's really the whole business part for Ring of Honor.
Yeah, super card of honor. You have Death Before Dishonor. Yeah, and that's a good point about not, they ultimately, like, they're an independent, they're I wouldn't really call them an independent wrestling company now, because they are corporately owned. They sign talent to, exclusive deals. So I don't really consider them independent pro wrestling, but the model is still very much independent pro wrestling, which has never had a use for weekly television for obvious reasons, because most indies don't run frequently enough to produce weekly television. I guess Beyond does, but outside of that, there's really not that. And you're right, it was always about building for some of these shows are 2 nights, but 6 to 8 big shows a year. And you could be a Ring of Honor fan and only watch those 6 or 8 shows a year and really understand the feuds and understand what was happening. And that's not how most people consume wrestling. It's we talk about it all the time, how TV is so important to the industry. And Dynamite is everything for AEW, and Raw and SmackDown are everything for WWE. That's just how it goes, and that's how everyone else consumes wrestling. for the most part, and Ring of Honor kind of uses an independent model, or even like a Japanese promotion model, where yes, there's this weekly product you can watch, but if you really want to see like all of the big matches, you should watch, our big shows. And I don't know if that played a role in them not growing, but I mean, Ring of Honor is a very successful wrestling company. It's a company that started during a time period when there was a ton of independent wrestling companies popping up. There was this whole like idea of like, we have to create the new, especially after WCW and after ECW closed, this thing, we have to create the new alternative for the WWE or WWF. We need to create this new company, and Ring of Honor had the best vision for what they wanted to do, which was to produce this super serious style of wrestling and kind of abandon a lot of the sports entertainment aspects of, WWF and WCW, and also didn't want to do quite the amount of, adult humor and lewdness that was happening in ECW, and created this kind of hybrid of these promotions. And it really worked. I mean, they've been going for almost 20 years now. They've outlasted a lot of the other companies that popped up at the time, and they've found financial stability. We can talk a lot about Sinclair's ownership of the company, but Sinclair has been willing to foot the bill. They've been willing to pay wrestlers, a good living, and continue to produce wrestling during the pandemic. And so like the company is a success, but it is interesting as longtime fans of the promotion, it's really strange to see Ring of Honor not really on the cutting edge of wrestling anymore, and not really relevant to the broader wrestling picture in the way that it used to be. And what so much of this comes from is just that AEW came and did Ring of Honor better than Ring of Honor could ever do. They were better funded. They've got a deeper roster. They have better TV. They have better creative. It's just it just took the core of Ring of Honor. They have all of the basically they have all the top stars from Ring of Honor, or the ones that aren't in WWE, but they have the core of what made Ring of Honor so big, and they just do it better. And Ring of Honor's here as this minor league version of that, running much smaller buildings, less, way smaller crowds, less good production, and it's tough for Ring of Honor, I feel like, to dig itself out of that hole, because AEW is not going away anytime soon. And I think that becomes more of a challenge for Ring of Honor to think about, how can we innovate again? How can we get to the next level? You see this in all types of businesses, right? Where a company comes up with a really innovative idea and it's at the cutting edge, but over time, other companies come in, they come up with more innovative ideas, they adopt the practices that the original company was doing. And in the end, it's kind of like ends up being like a little bit dated, and they lose that kind of edge. I'm trying to think of a good example in like the business world, but you see it a lot in like tech. Like MySpace is a good example, right? MySpace helps pioneer social media and had like this huge following. Facebook comes around, uses a lot of the same practices, and Facebook blows past MySpace, and MySpace is like, I don't know, how do we innovate? And I feel like Ring of Honor is kind of in that same boat, where it's hard for them to regain that kind of the atmosphere of they're on the precipice of innovation, and that if you're a fan of pro wrestling, you have to watch us because what's the future is happening right now, right here. It doesn't seem like that's happening in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, especially with, you look at a guy like Hangman Page, like he was, signed with Ring of Honor. He was one of their, he was, slowly, becoming one of their big stars. At least that's what it looked like, at least. But still, again, with Ring of Honor's, model of pay-per-views, it felt much more slower than this slow build that AEW is doing right now, because at least they have television each week. And so that at least makes him feel like, he was always, always on the cusp of the title. that he is now, obviously, since he won, the casino ladder match. But still, with Ring of Honor, he was, a guy built on the lower card. He joins Bullet Club, the Ring of Honor version of Bullet Club, and he starts gaining, much more higher places on the card. And, eventually, he moves over to AEW, Damian Priest, of course, or Punishment Martinez, as he's known in Ring of Honor. He was another guy that was, just always on like the mid card at least, but then he, all of a sudden now he just moves to WWE, and so we don't really know what they were going to do with those kind of guys. And so it's always seemed to be the issue with Ring of Honor, was that they always had one wrestler or two, or at least, who were gaining traction on the mid card, but then all of a sudden, they just jump over to another company, and it just, there's a lot of competitive spots, especially with a company like AEW just getting more hotter and hotter each week. That's the place you want to be. And Ring of Honor, like you said, it hasn't reached that same popularity as it did before. It's not really the place to be anymore. Ring of Honor previously, it used to be a place where if you didn't have the physique, you weren't the Vince McMahon guy, that's really, really where you went. Guys like Kevin Steen and El Generico, at one point, they weren't WWE guys. They didn't have that physical build until, obviously NXT came around, and then, they became Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And so they became, okay for the WWE system. But usually, Ring of Honor was a place for the smaller guys, quote unquote, and the high flyers. But now, that's a place for everyone. That's an attractive place for a lot of companies now, outside WWE. And so Ring of Honor, it's just really hard for them to really come up with some type of like a niche, I guess, for certain type of wrestlers to go to their company.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned like AEW starting and really, putting a blow to Ring of Honor, but, WWE for a long time abstaining from established indie talent, or really like, waiting on indie talent, like Bryan Danielson wrestling for years and years in the independents and being good enough to be a major league wrestler and not getting that opportunity. Same thing with Kevin Steen and El Generico. You had guys who could be around for years that could be mid-carders and then elevated, and you had all this time to establish their characters and to get them over and to get fans invested in their multi-year journey. And that was a good thing for Ring of Honor. But once WWE changed its policy on signing, guys from the independents and signing guys who were smaller, guys who didn't maybe have the necessary look, basically the Triple H era of NXT, you ended up like WWE got way, way, way more aggressive when it comes to signing talent. And you went from having like years and years with top talents to, to have them in the mid card and then elevate them upwards. You had to like push them super hard, like right away, or you lost any time to actually make money with those stars. Punishment Martinez, later Damian Priest, is a perfect example of that, as a guy who was on the undercard for Ring of Honor, and they elevated him, and I think they gave him the TV championship, and it was like, okay, this is going to be a guy we're going to build around for the next 2 or 3 years. And then he's gone to WWE because WWE saw a guy that they liked and thought had potential, and they didn't hesitate. They didn't say, this is an indie guy. They didn't say, this is a guy who doesn't fit us. I mean, he's kind of an exception because he's so big that they don't have like the physical, holdbacks that some of the other guys had. But that he was, and then all of a sudden he's gone, and he never really got a chance to make him a main eventer. You never really got a chance to make money with him because WWE had become so aggressive in signing talent. And that was a big blow to Ring of Honor. And you saw they had to adapt and they had to change their practices. They started signing guys to longer contracts. They started being quicker when it came to elevating guys. Bandito was a good example of a guy who started getting some traction on the independents, and Ring of Honor quickly was like, we want to sign this guy. They made him a big offer. I believe at the time had signed the biggest deal in Ring of Honor history with the company. And I think it was a 3-year contract. And that was something that they had to kind of adapt because they knew that the bigger companies are going to be sniffing around this guy, and we want to make sure that we lock him up. And that's just something that they never had to even think about. When the company was first founded, they were the place to be, and they were these are guys that WWE wouldn't want, and there's nowhere else to go. And, we'll always have our chances with them, but it did force a change for the company. And it does become harder because then you're gambling more. You're signing guys who you maybe aren't super like 100% sure are going to make it. You're investing and signing bigger contracts to talent that isn't established in your company. And I think Bandito has worked out for Ring of Honor in that sense, but you are getting less chance that you have to be more when you have to be more aggressive when it comes to signing talent. You're probably going to make more mistakes than in the old model where you could basically just keep booking guys. And if they got over, you kept booking them. And if they didn't get over, you got rid of them. And it's just a different ball game for pro wrestling, especially for a company like Ring of Honor, who has been kind of isolationist. And that is another big factor, I think, in the sense that, not working with AEW yet and having, limited working relationships with New Japan, it does create this kind of rough atmosphere where it feels like that they are in their own little universe like WWE is, but unlike WWE, they don't have the size to kind of justify being in their own universe. They seem like a company that should be working with other companies. And I think, honestly, I think that's only a matter of time.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to your point of Ring of Honor taking chances, a guy like Matt Taven was given the Ring of Honor title just seemingly like just very quickly. I don't think he was given the proper time to really build himself up. He wins the ladder match at Madison Square Garden to become the Ring of Honor champion, and his title reign was, it was okay, but he's clearly not the guy, to lead the company as the world champion. And then you look at more recently with Roosh, like obviously he's a big star, and so Ring of Honor, very quickly signed him and put the world title on him because he's obviously a very popular guy, and he's probably on his way out, maybe not, depends how his injury goes, quote unquote, but still they took that chance to really give him the mega push right away because he's obviously a big star who had left CMLL. He moved over to AAA, and so he's his stars on the rise, and so they felt the need to really push him and really put the title on him and just make him a dominant world champion.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to like the gambling element, right? And they wanted to find a niche, and they said, we're going to get some of the best lucha guys, and we're going to be like an American lucha, not going to be an American lucha promotion, but we're going to have that aspect to our product. And Roosh was really interesting because Roosh was probably the biggest, star in their prime in Mexico at the time. Didn't have a huge following in the US, especially when you consider like where Ring of Honor runs, which is in a lot in the Northeast, in the Midwest, and not as much like in the American Southwest, where you might have more like fans who are familiar with CMLL and AAA. And so the Roosh thing was always interesting to me because I would see him and I'd be like, this is a guy that understands how to be a star. This is a guy who knows how to work main events. This is a guy who understands how to interact with the crowd. But he wasn't really that over until I think later in his time in Ring of Honor. And it was kind of weird because it's like, we're going to push this guy like he's a big star, but fans aren't really familiar with him. They don't know his signature moves. He wasn't like a big star in America yet. But Ring of Honor was like, this guy we know is a big star, and we're going to sign him to a big contract, and we're going to have to push him. And I think that can be kind of messy at times. And like I said, it goes back to like gambling. Like, we need to find a new niche for us. We need to find something that will get people excited. Let's write a check to Roosh and let's hope that, he can connect with American audiences. And I think they got mixed results out of that. I personally enjoyed his work in Ring of Honor, but it looks like he's done. It looks like he probably maybe wasn't that happy about Ring of Honor, given that says he's injured and we don't know if he's really injured, but his contract's running out, which is really strange because Ring of Honor, signed his dad, they signed his brother, who's, his brother's an amazing wrestler. So that's, Dragon Lee. It's not like that was a huge ask to sign his brother, but they signed his dad, who probably got paid like a couple grand per bump. Vista del Ring, but they moved heaven and earth to get this guy, and I feel like it kind of got mixed results. And I don't know if it's back to the drawing board for Ring of Honor about what they want to do, but it's going to be it's interesting. I wanted to bring up like Ring of Honor now, like it doesn't have that buzz that they used to have. But when I watch Ring of Honor, I'm greatly entertained by the product. I think there are a lot of positives with the company that if people who are taking the time to watch feel rewarded when they're watching it. I have like a just kind of like a list of pros here for Ring of Honor. One of them is that the company has a really good, diverse roster. There's just a lot of different types of people on the roster. They have, the Lucha Libre guys, and you've got amazing high flyers and people like Dragon Lee and Ray Horace, and Bandito, like, some of the really best workers of that style in the world. You've got, your technical types. You've got like people like Jonathan Gresham, who's very good. You've got like these bigger shooter types like Josh Woods and Dak Draper. You've got older veteran types, guys who can promo, like guys like, Jay Lethal and Silas Young. You've got Shane Taylor and the guys in Shane Taylor Promotions, who I think have a really unique, natural kind of atmosphere, aura, and character around them. I'm really interested in Shane Taylor Promotions. You just have a lot of different stuff. They're rebuilding their women's division, which is always going to be a challenge just because the depth of talent that's available to them is not that high. But I've been impressed with some of the people that they've been able to find so far. Like Roxy, who's only 19, who's, is their new champion, has been very impressive, especially for someone of her experience level. But when I watch Ring of Honor, I'm like, there's a lot of good talent here, and there's a lot of people doing different stuff, and they can have a lot of different styles of matches. And it makes a lot of their bigger shows like really good because, every matches are different. You're seeing a lot of different personalities. You're seeing really young wrestlers. You're seeing older wrestlers. I think that from a roster perspective, while they're lacking like someone who's just super over and a giant star, they have like a lot of good professionals, at their disposal. And usually the shows are held to a pretty high standard of in-ring quality.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just speaking of the top young wrestlers, I mentioned this to you off air. Guys like Bandito and Flamita, like they're like in their prime. They're like in their 20s, along with Dragon Lee, and so it's not like they're a promotion with like a bunch of old vets who are just trying to recapture their glory days. It's a good promotion with younger guys that are reaching the prime of their careers or are in the prime of their careers. You even have other great talents like Brody King and his faction as well, Violence Unlimited, like a vet like Homicide, but also got yet some other guys in the prime right now, like Chris Dickinson and Tony Deppen, who like those guys are very diverse sort of styles of wrestling, all four of them, especially in promos as well. Brody King is a really good promo, and I don't think he gets the credit for that that he does. I think people just look at him that he's big and he's unique, has a unique look, obviously with all his tattoos, but still, like, he's a really good talent right now. I think most people are just maybe paying attention to him like the PWG atmosphere since he's team of Malachi Black, but he's doing really good stuff in Ring of Honor as well. Like when that match where he squashed Jay Lethal, like essentially a squash, like it wasn't like that short, but he like dominated Jay Lethal. He looks so dominant in that match. That's the best way to present Brody King. And even the presentation of Ring of Honor is really good as well. They've done some of that to AEW, adopting their ranking system, but still it works with the way they do it. I think they more so than AEW have really found consistent booking within this ranking system that they do have, and just making everything make sense with the main event scene as well. And for the women's division, like you said, like the depth is pretty hard to find. It's a lot of younger wrestlers who are still pretty new to the business, like Roxy, of course. She's booked as a young prodigy. She's like 19 years old, and so obviously she's still finding her way in the business, but she's still pretty good and good of champion to have. We'll also have other fan favorites, at least in the internet fan favorites like Trisha Dora and Miranda Alize. They're pretty popular within the that whole women's internet wrestling community there. And with Marie Kanellis, she is like in a shoot way, she is running that women's division. It's not just a kayfabe type of thing. She's actually producing the matches. She's the one finding the talent, and you can really see that with the type of wrestlers that they're bringing to that division. Like it's clearly people that Maria has researched. These are wrestlers that are popular on the indies, and they're getting their chance at Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I mean, they have a really good roster. Like I've even forgot about like Chris Dickinson and Tony Deppen and Brody King. Like they have a ton of guys that can have really good matches, and they have a lot of different stuff that they can do. I think another strength of the company is that they do like long-term storytelling and long-term booking extremely well. They will have storylines that last for months. They have storylines that last for years. I feel like I'm like the old, like people like the Matt Taven and Vincent storyline.
Yep.
I think that angle is fantastic. Fantastic angle. And because Ring of Honor doesn't have the buzz and people like to, crap on Matt Taven for, getting the worst opportunity ever to be, Ring of Honor world champion, which is as AEW was getting off the ground and was, becoming super exciting. But I thought that whole angle, starting with Matt Taven's world title run, and then basically like Vincent being like becoming like this unhinged, crazy character, slower and slower. And then Matt Taven basically, who was a heel, becoming a babyface and acknowledging like, I was so obsessed with my title run that I didn't even see that my best friend was going off the deep end. And then just having this blood feud that lasted for like over a year. And they had the big blow off and they had the cinematic match they had, which was a good cinematic match. Yep. They had the big cage match blow off that they put Vincent over strong. Like, I'm like, this, people aren't going to talk about it because it's Ring of Honor, and I get that it doesn't have the buzz. But if you are invested in this storyline, if you wanted to have characters and angles that you're invested in, like, this is great. It's great pro wrestling, and there's not a lot of promotions that are delivering that kind of storytelling. And it's not every feud in Ring of Honor, but I thought that went under the radar. I don't think it's going to show up in like feud of the year polls or anything like that, but when you talk about like, if I'm a longtime fan, what is my investment in these people? They did an excellent job spending, years telling this story. And you'll see that, you had the really long Jonathan Gresham versus Jay Lethal kind of feud. You had, some other feuds that were big. You got like Flip Gordon, who has kind of had a really great, strange career, but seems to be on some form of a long-term kind of babyface heel and then maybe babyface feud once again. I just think there's like a lot of stuff you can sink your teeth into if you are invested at all in Ring of Honor in a way that a lot of other promotions don't do. Some, especially some like indie promotions and stuff, they might have one kind of storyline that they kind of arc together and everything else is just kind of random. But Ring of Honor does have some time and effort that goes into their feuds, and sometimes they really work.
Yeah, that's sort of that's what I sort of mean by for the Matt Taven title run. Yeah, that's what I was sort of disappointing about that, was that like Matt Taven is a good talent. He's a good wrestler. It's just that, he just got pushed too early and just wasn't ready for the main event scene for the world title picture. But obviously, yeah, like with the Vincent feud, like he has clearly found his groove right now, especially teaming back up with Mike Bennett with OGK. Like they have, Ring of Honor has shown that they have a good tag division. You mentioned Shane Taylor Promotions, like there's a good trios division right there, especially working with the Mexico Squad back when they were a trio. Like that was a really good feud that they had over there.
It's the best trios division I can think of, and a lot of that comes from Shane Taylor Promotions being kind of an anchor for it.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan of Shane Taylor Promotions because there's something about like just the way they walk to the ring, in the way they have this attitude where like, these are three really big guys that you don't want to mess with, which sounds like a simple character to portray in wrestling, but is often difficult because everyone's like focused on, got to be charismatic, got to be entertaining at all times. And it's like, no, these are guys who are just kind of like cool dudes who you don't want to mess with. And they come across as like really authentic, like people you would actually see in real life, not these like over the top characters that like are clearly television, performers, but like, like just kind of regular dudes. I think like kind of like the way Guerrillas of Destiny have that kind of weird charisma where it's like, these are just guys who are like, they're tough, they're bad, but they're also like just super confident and cool. And I think Shane Taylor is a really good promo. I think he's grown as a performer a ton during his time in Ring of Honor. It's like a different, it's a different type of like authenticity that I really enjoy. And Ring of Honor is a promotion that's always been about like authenticity, and like we're not going to have that many over the top characters. We're not going to be doing this cartoonish parody of pro wrestling. We're going to be like serious, and they've always kind of relied on those kind of personalities. And I think Shane Taylor Promotions, all 3.5, I'm going to count O'Shea Edwards as a half person because he's kind of in it, but he's kind of not. But you know, Shane Taylor, Moses, Quan, like I think are really impressive, like as a group, and I think have helped create, like, you know, along with Mexa Squad, like have created a really nice like trios atmosphere, and that's something that a lot of companies like, you know, New Japan Pro Wrestling have struggled to kind of create over time.
Yeah, and at AEW, like the opportunity is there for a trios division, but like there's no confirmation yet that they're fully on board for a trios division.
I mean, they're going to kill the trios division. We know that. Everyone knows that. But I like that Ring of Honor has done something that other promotions have struggled to do, and that is create trios belts that like actually mean something.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, yeah, it's kind of disappointing as well with ROH leaving, because you have their own Los Ingobernables sort of branch, the LFI, with, you know, Kenny King was doing really good work with LFI as well. I'm very curious to see, you know, what happens with that. I don't know. Again, you mentioned it earlier, how they have a very loose connection with New Japan. Like Brody King will sometimes be on Strong, and you know, Jonathan Gresham, he's working some of the live shows as well, and so very touch and feel for that. But still, like getting Kenny King joining up with Naito, Lij, yeah, that'd be pretty cool to see, because Kenny King is really doing good work at this stage in his career, joining LFI with Dragon Lee, and you know, again, that's probably should be both of them, I guess, with ROH leaving.
Yeah, you know, their New Japan connection, you know, with the pandemic, you would think that it's been really hard for them to get talent in, but it's also strange that you're seeing so much New Japan talent like come in the United States, or if they live in the United States, and they haven't been showing up in Ring of Honor, and they've been showing up in, you know, AEW, or they've been showing up in, you know, GCW, or just on random indies. Like, you know, Minoru Suzuki's been in the country for a month. Why hasn't he shown up at Ring of Honor? You know, Jay White, Will Ospreay, like these guys who have histories in Ring of Honor, you know, why haven't they shown up? It's very strange to me where they stand. And that's why I kind of said they're like kind of isolationist, because I think Ring of Honor, and I get there's probably bad blood from the Elite leaving Ring of Honor to start AEW. Ring of Honor played a big role in kind of helping All In, the original All In show. I believe Ring of Honor actually owns the like the rights to All In. They have the rights to the broadcast and stuff. So I can see that there's some bad blood, but like with New Japan, I think that they're eventually going to have to come around and say, yes, we want to work with AEW, because I do think that they can offer things. First of all, AEW has proven that they're not going to bury Ring of Honor talent on their show. You know, we've seen how AEW's handled Impact talent. We've seen how they've handled New Japan talent. We've seen how they've handled NWA talent. Like they're very Tony and everyone's very respectful of their stars. Like, we're not going to make these guys look like losers. We're going to hype them up. We're going to say these guys are great wrestlers from this great promotion. And I think, you know, it would benefit both. I think they could benefit both sides, because a lot of people, when I've talked about this with other people, I've talked about it with Rich Craich before, and he was kind of like, I don't know what Ring of Honor can get out of or what AEW will get out of a relationship with Ring of Honor. It seems to be like something Ring of Honor would benefit from, just being with the bigger promotion. But I do think that like having like some of your younger AEW wrestlers getting reps on Ring of Honor, whether it's on Ring of Honor television or maybe working one of these bigger pay-per-views, like send out, you know, a Private Party or a Top Flight or a Jungle Boy or someone that you feel like you can beat, Ring of Honor can beat, but can give them kind of a different match. Like, what if Jungle Boy is, I know like Gresham isn't the pure champion anymore, but what if like Jungle Boy was just in to wrestle a pure wrestling match against Jonathan Gresham for the championship, or even without the championship? Like, and that's like a big match on a pay-per-view. I'm much more excited for that pay-per-view. And I think if you're AEW, I think you're looking at this as a really valuable opportunity to get someone like Jungle Boy out of AEW's environment into a different environment where he can continue to learn and grow his skills. And I think there's opportunities there for a lot of, you know, for AEW talent to get some reps working in an atmosphere like Ring of Honor, which is different, but I still think has a lot of value and can teach a lot to young wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, the only it's very unofficial, I guess. Like Homicide appeared on Rampage. How about Eddie Kingston and John Moxley? And
Mhm.
I guess he's technically Ring of Honor, but still, like it's very like his very unofficial connection there. And like especially with like you mentioned before, like like Minoru Suzuki, like he had a match against Jonathan Gresham on GCW out of all places. Like
Yeah,
that was the Gresham Suzuki match. Like how does that happen if you're Ring of Honor? That should happen on your programming, not on some an indie show. That's just insane to me.
exactly. And that's the kind of match that people will buy to see.
Yeah.
That's like a dream match for people. And you're right. That, I mean, that's a great point. I forgot about that. But yeah, that's perfect example of like, why isn't that happening on your show? I will say another little, you said Homicide showing up. And I don't know, Homicide seems like a guy who's like a freelancer, like he's not, doesn't have an
Yeah,
ROH
exactly.
contract, so he can bounce around more. But um, I did think that it was somewhat interesting. Maybe there's nothing to this, but Bobby Fish, when he came out for his match against Sammy Guevara this week on Dynamite, he does come out to Red Dragon's ROH theme song. I thought Ring of Honor had like licensing for all these songs, but maybe they don't. Maybe Bobby Fish has it now, and they used it for AEW. But he did come out to Red Dragon's theme song,
Yeah.
which I thought was a little bit interesting, just because um, if Ring of Honor does have those rights, does that mean Ring of Honor is working with AEW? Did they come to a deal or something like that? Um, it's all very interesting. I think that um, if Ring of Honor does want to get back into the buzz, there are worse things than having one of your top stars show up on Dynamite and wrestle a match. And even if they lose that match, I still think it's greatly beneficial if you wanted to do Bryan Danielson versus Jonathan Gresham on an episode of Dynamite or Rampage, and they have like this epic 20-minute match, and the announcers put over how Gresham has revived the Pure Rules division in Ring of Honor, and that was a division that Bryan Danielson used to be a top guy in. There are worse things than that happening to your promotion. One thing I will say about Ring of Honor, another positive for them, is I think that their presentation is very good, given that they're limited in the size of the buildings they have to run and the kind of production that they value that they have invested in them. And I think their commentary is excellent. I think Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman are an excellent commentary team. I think Riccaboni is really underrated as a play-by-play guy. I think they do a great job explaining everything to fans. I think they do a great job reacting to the stuff in real time. Caprice is very enthusiastic about the product. He's very enthusiastic about stuff that's happening, but not in like a too like extreme, like guy who's clearly faking it way. He
Right.
just comes across as really naturally enthusiastic, which is important. And I think that's a strength of the company. I think they would say they're probably, I'm trying to think, I would say that they're probably my second favorite announce team, like cumulatively in wrestling. I would say that Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton are better, but Riccaboni and Coleman are really good as well. And I think that helps if you're watching, you're like, man, these guys are real good, because nothing can soil a smaller wrestling promotion than just like atrociously bad commentary.
Right. Yeah, especially with the women's division matches, you have Dave Prazak
Mm-hmm.
on for those matches, and he's obviously well, for people who don't know, he was the promoter for Shimmer and Rise, and pretty much any top women's wrestler ever worked for those promotions, and so he obviously knows a lot about them. I remember on the Nicole Savoy match, like he was listing out all these facts about Nicole Savoy. Oh, she used to team with Shayna Baszler, and she used to do all this, and she's very technical wrestler and all that, and those are just those little things to really help your audience understand who these wrestlers are, because a lot of these new women's wrestlers, they're very fresh and new to your audience, and so it's really good to have someone who's an expert on these talents to really give these nuggets of information for you. And so I agree. Riccaboni, he has this very unique sort of positive energy he brings to the broadcast that really is infectious and really gets you excited about all these matches.
Yeah, he's very much like an old-fashioned like Lance Russell style kind of
Yeah.
commentator. He's not doing a Jim Ross impersonation like so many other people are. He's not trying to be like the cool guy, like play-by-play guy, and another trope you see. Like he comes across as just like this kind of like very professional, like old school kind of guy that used to do television that you don't see a lot anymore. And it's really beneficial. I'll also say that Ring of Honor really, somewhat surprisingly, given that um, the company's background of being owned by Sinclair Broadcasting Group and some controversies that have come from that have come from Sinclair's very conservative approach to news programming, but has handled the pandemic like real, if you, in a certain way, like probably the safest of any wrestling company. In WWE and AEW, they basically didn't stop taping. They just kept going and going and going, and they had cases, and WWE wasn't testing for a while and all that stuff. You had New Japan, who also were very safe for the start of it, but Ring of Honor really, they took last year, they didn't run for a long time. Then they took great precautions. They, flew everyone into a closed site. They had a bubble for their TV tapings. They taped a bunch of TV. They didn't have live fans for a while. But they've, by every count I've seen, have treated their employees very well. They paid people. I mean, they paid talent that wasn't contracted talent. Talent that were on the books for, okay, we're going to bring you in for our show on April 29th. And when that show got canceled because of the pandemic, they paid those guys. So like they've given guys a chance to, perform in a safe environment and continue to make money when so many other, wrestlers were struggling. So many independent wrestlers were, out of work and all of that. And I will say that they deserve a lot of credit for putting talent first in a industry that almost never does that, and have done a really good job, producing wrestling in a safe environment.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of things on that, like the whole Sinclair Broadcasting thing. Like, it could easily just be like a Fox thing where like Disney, they bought the Fox Entertainment stuff, but just excluded that from the Fox News stuff. And it's like the same thing with Ring of Honor, where like they're just dealing with a different arm of Sinclair Broadcasting.
Yes,
Ring of Honor, the news side.
Ring of Honor is not the MAGA wrestling promotion.
Yeah, exactly. But also like, yeah, with just mentioning about like how they're been paying other talent, like it just reminds me how they have international talent from Australia, like Adam Brooks and Slex.
Yeah.
Who like, they're pretty much currently in Australia because, it's much safer over there. But I assume eventually once the world opens up, like you're going to get guys like Adam Brooks and Slex and all the other Aussie talent coming into Ring of Honor. So that's really exciting stuff to come in to look forward to.
And those are good guys.
Yes.
Like
especially Adam Brooks.
Well, Adam Brooks is a great worker. I think Slex is a really good total package talent. I think he can work. I think he can talk. I think he's got a good look. He's got a good catchphase. The business is booming, but he says it in an Australian accent, so it sounds way cooler. And those are guys you can bring in and be like, oh yeah, that's what happens with Ring of Honor. It's almost like, oh yeah, I forgot they had these guys.
Yeah.
Like they got, they lost a lot of talent to AEW. They, had lost talent to WWE in years past, but they really said, you know what, we got to get in the game. We're not going to lay down. We're going to put in competitive offers for some talent, because it's not like these guys only had nowhere to work but Ring of Honor. A lot of these guys had offers from other places and they chose Ring of Honor, and the schedule is easy. They do taping, so you're only working, once a month sometimes and doing those kind of tapings, and guys are making six figures in Ring of Honor. It's not like it's not everyone is, but it's not like these guys are struggling, and it's good to see, talent being treated well. If I wanted to get into one negative with Ring of Honor right now, and it's not really it's almost like something that's actually a good thing, but it's kind of a bad thing because of that. And that is, I just feel like a lot of times on their roster, they have a lot of people who have been around in Ring of Honor for a very long time. And it's not like they're like not talented people that like don't deserve their jobs, but I just think that sometimes they're people that are just kind of stale in the environment because they've been around for so long and they've done everything. I'll use Jay Lethal as an example, because I think Jay Lethal is a super talented guy. I think he's a great worker. I think he's very charismatic. I think he's a really, really good promo. I think he had a great run as Ring of Honor champion. I think he can be a babyface. I think he can be a heel. He can do all that. But I just feel like he's been in Ring of Honor for a really long time, and he's done everything in Ring of Honor. And I'd like to see him in a different environment doing something different. And again, it's nothing against Jay Lethal, a talent person, but I think it happens all the time. You see it in WWE where people are super talented, but they've done everything in WWE, and now it's like, okay, this guy's going to be on a pay-per-view match. You can call it the Randy Orton syndrome. Like, it's just kind of, once you're around for so long, and I feel like there's a lot of people in Ring of Honor like that. You can, Silas Young, the Briscoe brothers, there's more. Let me think for a second. Even like Taven, Mike Bennett is back after, he went to WWE, but he's been basically a Ring of Honor talent forever and ever. It's not like Dalton Castle. It's, again, not like, I don't want to say like, it's not because these guys aren't good. It's not because these guys aren't talented, but it does feel like they have a lot of kind of stale people in the roster. And I think there's a healthy amount of turnover that can happen. And I think it could benefit the promotion, and it could benefit the talent individually. Like, not saying anyone should lose their job or anything like that, but when I watch these shows, it's kind of like, I like seeing some of the newer talent or talent that's, being elevated a bit, but it's hard to sometimes see like, okay, a lot of these guys have done everything. Like, how many times can the Briscoes win the tag titles? Like, and they're, I'm a fan of the Briscoes. They've been great for their entire run, and they're over and all of that. But I do feel like when I watch that, there's just kind of have a lot of stale names, on in the company.
Yeah, it really feels like the Briscoes need to pull out Dudleys and just find another brother to join the trios division to add some life to them. Because like them as a tag team, I agree. It definitely feels stale. Like, they're still very good,
and they've had big singles runs. Like, Jay Briscoe was the champion for like over a year. Like, it's not like I'm just saying they've done it all in the company, and they've been baby faces, they've been heels, they've done like that stuff. It's one of those things that's just like, 18 years in the company or 19 years in the company, it's just like eventually you run out of stuff to do. And that's the industry. That's why we used to have the territories, and guys would leave the territory and go to a new one and be fresh. And I think there are some names on there that could benefit from that. And again, nothing against these people. I like a lot of these performers, right? It's just the like, guys get stale.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if there's someone in the Ring of Honor dojo or just someone in the WPC they can find that kind of looks similar to them, or you ask them to grow facial hair and just call them a Briscoe and start have them feuding into Shane Taylor Promotions and then Trios Division. That will help bring some life. But other than that, yeah, I mean, for Dalton Castle, like, ever since he lost the world title, it just seems like he felt aimless. I think they try to, spice things up when he turned on the boys and kick them out, but still, like, it hasn't really clicked at all. I think, they try to bring him some other guys to tag with, some younger guys, but it just hasn't really gelled at all. I think I remember, he was team with Jack Draper for a little bit, but still, those guys just don't really, click at all. Like, maybe technically wise, and they're in the ring, but still, like, just aesthetically, like, those guys don't really fit together as a team.
Yeah, and it takes some, trial and error. And I'll say this, when I watch Ring of Honor, especially this year, like, they're pushing newer guys. It's not like these guys are on top and they're never giving up their spot, brother. Like, it's like they have like, Jay Lethal lost to Brody King in like 4 minutes. Like, it's not like they're like holding on to their spots. It's more of just like a thing. Like, I think Jay Lethal could, I don't know if he'd go back to Impact, if he showed up on NWA Power, if he went to, AEW, if not really NXT anymore, but if you went to Triple H's NXT, like, I think all those things Jay Lethal could be great in, and it would be great for him. It's just, there's only so much you can do, in the same company for a while, and Ring of Honor has a lot of those talents that have been around for, a very long time. And so that's something that I think about. We can't really talk about Ring of Honor without talking about like their creative situation, because you had, Delirious, who had the book for a long time, and then as post AEW being launching and Ring of Honor kind of spiraling, being knocked off its perch a bit and kind of falling backwards, you have they have Marty Scurll, right? And Scurll has a year on his contract that the Elite did not. So they have Scurll for a year in their minds, and he's the guy that he's going to AEW because he was a member of the Elite. He was a huge factor of it, but they have a year with Marty Scurll, and very controversially did not put the title on him, even though he was by far the most popular person in the promotion. That's when they put it on Taven. And he starts up Villain Enterprises, and he's kind of the linchpin of the company. And then when his contract comes up, he re-signs with Ring of Honor, which is a huge surprise. And the big thing that was dangled in front of him, which was, we're giving you the book. So he becomes the head booker of Ring of Honor. And that led to like a lot of optimism about Ring of Honor. I think New Japan showed more interest in working with Ring of Honor because they, had great familiarity with Marty. And people were like, and he was bringing in some new guys, and he was like, I was like, Marty, this could be a turning point because they found somebody who might have something for them. Then, of course, speaking out happens. Marty becomes persona non grata. He, is accused, which he basically admits to, having sex with an underage girl. I think that's I shouldn't even say that because I don't know the specifics of it, but it was something to do with an underage girl. I don't know if they had sex or he was there was some form of sexual aggression towards a minor, and he he loses everything. He eventually gets fired from Ring of Honor. He's been out of wrestling for a long time, and they had to hit the reset button again. So they thought they had something, and then they lose overnight. Basically, they lose it. And, Delirious gets the book back, and it just kind of becomes, they thought they had something in this kind of post AEW world, and they lost it. And that's a tough break. And I'm not saying it's like, obviously Marty, doesn't deserve to have the book back, but if you're from Ring of Honor, it's a tough break for you getting that blow, losing someone who you felt like was going to be, a real creative boon to the company and kind of turn things around. And now having to start back at square one and this rebuild.
Yeah, like you said, like Marty's girl re-signed of Ring of Honor was a shock to everyone because he was a being the elite guy and just best friends with the Bucks and Kenny and all those guys. But he was given the book, and it just added a lot of these interesting sort of things for everyone. Like, oh, what's some Marty's girl promotion gonna look like? This was like early, like late 2019, early 2020, and so like obviously the pandemic happens, and so there wasn't really a lot of Ring of Honor. It wasn't a huge sample size to look at in terms of what a Marty's girl promotion would look like. And of course, Speaking Out happens during that same time, and so he gets cut eventually after the Ring of Honor does their own investigation, seems like now what Hunter Johnston or Delirious, he along with many others, Joe Koff is part of the higher ups as well in Ring of Honor. They're sort of trying to pick up the pieces and trying to figure things out for themselves. It was a huge reset button for them. It's just trying to figure out of what to do next.
Yeah, and then that's a tough blow. Like you said, we had a small sample size, and Marty was also like the most popular wrestler in the company.
Yep.
So in addition to losing the booker, you lose your most popular wrestler in the company, the kind of guy you can put the title on, and whatever he's doing is interesting. And so that those are big blows to the company. That stuff happens in wrestling. I think moving forward, what does Ring of Honor need to do? Well, and here's the thing: Ring of Honor does not appear to be in danger going out of business. I have no idea what their financials are like. It has been said time and time again that Sinclair is happy with Ring of Honor. They're happy to have the programming that they're producing in-house, and it can go out on all their affiliates. It can be sold to other affiliates. I know we get it on Nesson, the New England Sports Network here,
Yep.
Which I don't think is a Sinclair broadcasting thing. I believe it's owned by the Red Sox. It's owned by Red Sox ownership group. Go Red Sox. Sinclair by all accounts is happy with Ring of Honor. So it's not like they're in danger of going out of business. So it's not like they need to turn business around or we're all going under. But how do they kind of rebuild? How do they get back into the wrestling picture? How do they innovate again? Do you have any ideas, Jason, about like what you think Ring of Honor can do to kind of recapture some of that magic?
Yeah, I think the only thing I can really think of is just baby steps in terms of partnerships with other promotions, especially with New Japan. Like, I think you really need to formalize that. I don't think you can, instead of all this wishy-washy sort of things, like, oh, Brody King sometimes appears on Strong, or Jonathan Gresham will appear on Strong. Like, you really need to really make that more formal thing. I don't know, like in some type of way, just saying like a press conference type of thing, or just whatever kind of thing there. or more New Japan guys being on Ring of Honor television instead of the other way around. And there's just tons of partnerships. If you don't want to go right away with AEW, still NWA, all those other promotions as well. Impacts, of course, but obviously, of course, yeah, AEW is the biggest thing that they can partner with. Even with the women's division. Like I remember before the pandemic, like they were working with Stardom before. Mayu Iwatani, she was their former women's champion before. She had was part of the Madison Square Garden show, and so yeah, like I don't know if they still have a partnership at all. Like obviously the pandemic has made that difficult. And Stardom, I don't think they're in a position to let talent leave to the US right now. I think they really want to keep everyone in-house for now, especially with all these big shows coming up, Osaka Joe Hall and all those other Budokan shows that they've done recently as well. And so I don't know if they still have a partnership once things open up, but still that could be a big thing for the women's division to add more talent and help out the younger talent as well, had more eyes, especially the growth Stardom has seen as of late, that could really help them out, especially for more US presence with pretty sizable big promotion of Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and you could potentially send people like Roxy over to Stardom and do a tour of Stardom. That would greatly benefit her, obviously. Yeah, I don't think there's like this one big game plan to turn things around. I think that they need to continue to do what they are doing, which is producing stuff that has a high baseline of quality. And I think you got to keep trying new people. You've got to, encourage talent to be innovative. You got to get those people to think about their characters more, get people to try to hit on something. They do a good job with like people like Danhausen, who are like these meme wrestlers where they use them appropriately. Like they use them like they're never like in the main event or anything. And they're never like, oh, here's our big Danhausen push, but they keep them around because they're good for, social media engagement. They're good for getting some fans through the door. They're good for children, if that's what you're looking for. I do think they do a good job with the people like Danhausen. But I do think you want people who like, you can get some of you, if you're signing guys to exclusive, contracts, if you can get somebody gets really hot, it can really help your promotion. And it might be hard to get someone really hot when you don't have the microscope on you. Cause like I said, with the Matt Taven feud, which I thought was really good, but because ROH doesn't have a ton of buzz around it, a lot of people either dismiss it or just are completely unaware of it. Maybe you make a relationship with the Ring of Honor and maybe you use, or I'm sorry, with an AEW, and you use that opportunity to get one of your stars on their programming and say, oh my God, this guy is great. It could just be simple as putting, let's say, okay, we're gonna do a Dragon Lee versus Ray Phoenix match on Rampage, and they tear the house down. And then people were like, oh, Dragon Lee, well, I gotta go check out Ring of Honor. If this guy's got a bunch of matches like that one, in Ring of Honor, which he does, I think that's something that you can benefit them I'd encourage them to continue to allow talent to be creative, allow people to work on new gimmicks and new ideas, and to try and find that kind of person that's going to be over, that can be a big star and can kind of create and create something that can gain traction. It can be hard. And I think it's extra hard when you're a company like Ring of Honor, which feels in some ways like a dated brand. It doesn't feel like they're new and innovating. Like they lost some of their market share, no doubt. I mean, obviously AEW is a big blow, but like the rise of Game Changer Wrestling, GCW, I think definitely hurt Ring of Honor. They run in a lot of the same markets. GCW is just, doesn't have any, GCW is trying to be as outlaw as possible. They're trying to be a rebellious group. They're trying to do, we're going to do a ton of death matches. We're going to have a lot of, swearing on our show. We're going to do all of this stuff, kind of like the old ECW, like really pushing the limits of what you wanted to do. And that's definitely worked for GCW, and they've had a big following. And I think there are people who used to be Ring of Honor regular watchers that are now, regularly attending GCW shows. And so I think, and GCW feels like a promotion that's innovating right now, and Ring of Honor feels like the old dated brand. And I think that's why you see the kind of different trajectories that they're on. But I don't think it's too late for Ring of Honor to find something new, to kind of, to find a hot star, to create a new hot angle that get people, back invested in it. I don't think Ring of Honor is ever going to be as big as AEW is, but I don't see a reason, if you have stable financial backing, why they couldn't, be back to, doing 1,000 people per show and, having a really big show during WrestleMania weekend or something like that.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, a star that is on the cusp right now is Jonathan Gresham, who
Mhm.
looks like he'll be feuding with Bandito for the world title. Who knows when that will happen? Probably maybe Final Battle is when that match will happen, and presumably Gresham will win that and become the world champion. And he's done really good vignettes. He posted on social media, and it's also on the Ring of Honor YouTube channel as well. And he's done a really good job at really portraying his character. The foundation is his persona, and he's done a really good job. Of course, yeah, like you mentioned before, like bring back the pure division, really instilling what Ring of Honor, what Ring of Honor, I guess, should be, I guess, in that character's eyes. And he's brought on a lot of unique concepts, a lot of unique matches, especially with the whole pure rules. The whole his match against Mike Bennett was really good. They really told a good story within those rules, and he's done a really good job of protecting his character and really portraying his character as well. Along with the others, in the foundation as well. Of course, Jay Lethal, Josh Woods, of course, he recently faced for the title, and so yeah, he's done a really good job at portraying his character, and he's currently on the cusp. We'll see when that title match happens between him and Bandito.
Yeah, and Gresham, the decision to lock up Gresham with a contract, bring the Pure Rules division back, and push Gresham in that division hard, probably the best creative decision the company has had, since the Elite left and AEW was founded. I think it did create an identity for the promotion where we're going to have these different rules that are going to make pro wrestling look really seriously, and we're going to present this guy in Gresham as the master of these rules and the master of this kind of match, because he always had the reputation of being an excellent technical wrestler, but I think because of his lack of height, and his size, people never really took him that serious as like the total badass. And they leaned into it and they said, we're going to design these matches where this guy just looks like this unstoppable badass. We don't care, how short he is. Like we're going to present him as that. And it really worked. And I feel like he really got over with the fan base and created something really different than anything else you'd see in wrestling. And I do think that he's been a huge success for their company. And he's done such a great job. He's done a great job with the technical wrestling. He's done a great job getting that over. Physically, he looks great. We said, I think he's been powerlifting with Jordan Grace because he's just way bigger than he ever was. He's still short, but he doesn't give off this impression that he's like tiny. And commentary does a great job, like talking about him and presenting him like this. Like I think it was during, he wrestled Dak Draper, who Dak Draper's like 6'5" and big, like in a former collegiate wrestler. And they're like, oh, Jonathan Gresham's going to wrestle this guy. And Jonathan Gresham's the dominant kind of like bully guy. And Dak Draper, who is a heel, is like kind of arrogant, but he's so much bigger than him. But it works because Gresham makes you believe that it can work. And that's just him being a great worker, and that's him mastering the system. Definitely, like most of when you watch Ring of Honor, it's a highlight every time that stands out.
Yeah, for sure. They always deliver on their big shows. Death Before Dishonor was a really fun show, even though like that show didn't really have a lot of buzz going in and even going out. It's like it got talked about, but still there's only a couple highlights that people talk about, like Roxy winning the title and like the main events as well. But other than that, not people are talking about Death Before Dishonor, even though it's a really good show. And Ring of Honor shows are generally always pretty good, but yeah, just the hype, it just isn't there. And I guess Ring of Honor, they're just doing. They are showing patience, at least. They're not trying to hotshot anything. They're not really trying to push anything too quickly. They are taking their time, but at the same time, there are growing pains to having this patient kind of booking and having this patient kind of approach. Like you are going to have some misses, not really misses, but it's just like you're gonna take some hits from terms of hype, but eventually your gamble is that these things will eventually pay off once you execute on some of these plans.
Yeah, and I think that's the case. I think like their booking, like with under Delirious, like the booking is good in the sense that they do some long-term stuff. There's stuff that usually always makes sense. The wins and losses matter. A lot of the finishes of the matches are well thought out. They don't have a ton of stuff that's hot. Like, oh man, this is a hot feud. This is going to be big for business. And on the independents, that stuff really does matter because unlike in the major wrestling promotions where it takes forever to build an audience and it takes forever to build like a trend upwards, in independent wrestling, you can just have one big match that suddenly people were talking about online. And, because the scale of it is so much smaller, you're doubling your pay-per-view buys from the last pay-per-view and your attendance is doubled and you sold out. You can see, tangible differences in business. And you look, I'm sure, this might be pie in the sky stuff. I'm sure Bryan Danielson would like to wrestle a Ring of Honor match.
Yeah.
I'm sure CM Punk would be open. I don't know, maybe not Punk, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was open to doing a Ring of Honor match. Kevin Owens' contract is up, in February, and he looks like he's headed to AEW. I'm sure he would, like, if they end up with a working relationship, I'm sure these really big stars would be interested in working in Ring of Honor because they have such a history there. So I do think that's possible. And, it's a really, Ring of Honor doesn't get a lot of buzz, but I do think that it is a really interesting promotion to talk about because they're kind of at a crossroads and they have some strengths and they have some weaknesses, but I think overall the company is well managed. I think that it's not like this, chaotic thing. It's not like TNA used to be. It's not like what NWA can be like now. It's not like WWE or anything like that. Like, it's well managed. The booking is good. The matches are good. It's just lacking that buzz, that special feeling that makes pro wrestling so interesting. And if they can get it back, I'll be very excited because, like we said at the beginning of this, we're both historically fans of Ring of Honor. I think people like Ring of Honor. They like the Ring of Honor World Championship and, what that means and kind of what Ring of Honor has meant to pro wrestling. And I hope that they can, pierce that bubble once again.
Yeah, just like a final thing to say was just that, like, you look at promotions that have worked with AEW, like Impact and NWA, those promotions are seen in a better light, even though if you watch their television, it's not really that good. Like Impact TV,
Impact for sure.
Yeah,
is seen in a better light.
Yeah, Impact with all their controversies and and their television as well. It's okay. And NWA Power, like no one talks about NWA Power, but NWA is just seen as this rising promotion. Like, oh, Billy Corgan is doing a great job. It's like, have you seen their show or their pay-per-views outside the main event?
I have never. This is just a blind spot to me. It's like I have never seen any of the Corgan era NWA stuff.
You're not missing much.
I hear people talk about it. I hear the recaps of it and stuff like that. Joe Lanza, who jokes he's like the last person really watching it, is just constantly talking about how horrible the television is. Like, it's just so bad. I understand it's very easy to watch, but yeah, you're right. They do paint them in a better light. Like Impact for sure. Impact is a joke. Like Impact was the bad punchline for so long. Like LOL TNA was, the meme for forever and ever. And suddenly Kenny Omega's their champion. And now it's like, Impact. And they had, Impact is better than they used to be. When Callis came in and kind of, in the being bought by I can't remember. Anthem, being bought by Anthem and getting out of the Dixie Carter era, like they did improve to a degree, but you're right. If you watch the show, it's like a lot of weird shit happening on Impact that like isn't really that good. But having worked with AEW, getting Kenny as your champion and now Christian Cage as your champion, like it's like, things are actually, bringing some old names back like Sabin and Shelley and, getting Eric Young back, like things are looking kind of, different for Impact. And I think a lot of that does come from that relationship with AEW. And yeah, Ring of Honor is like, I think, Ring of Honor doesn't have the reputation for being bad.
Yeah.
In a way that some other companies have. And that's what kind of makes it an interesting point for its business to be kind of stagnant. It's like, it's not like these things it's not like the show is bad. It's not like the promotion is doing bad matches and bad angles. They've made some miscues, sure. But it's just like they don't have the buzz that they used to have. And I don't know how you regain that buzz, even if the product is objectively still pretty, of a high quality.
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, there's no one fix. It's just it's a progressive bunch of things. Multiple steps need to be taken, and some things just have to be a wait and see, right? There's still some restrictions in terms of international talent coming in that could maybe help boost your promotion, but still, it'd probably be more of the same of just like, okay, there's like talented guys in Ring of Honor, like that's not anything new. Like there's already so much talent right now that people aren't really aware of, or even are aware that they work for Ring of Honor, probably just aware of them working in other promotions. And again, there's no one easy thing, one easy fix for what Ring of Honor's buzz is at this moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think time will tell, if they can regain that buzz, if they remain like this forever and ever, which is possible. I mean, Impact has remained like they are for a very long time. So we'll see. Again, I guess this was officially our 1-year anniversary show, which was only talked about at the beginning. But again, thank everyone who's been listening and everyone who's been following us and subscribing to our channel. Happy to answer any questions people have. If you have comments about Ring of Honor or anything like that, we'll be back in, I think, 2 weeks. And I think we're going to talk about the G1, but we're going to talk about kind of similar to what we talked about with Ring of Honor today, but focused, a lot on New Japan. There's obviously a ton of happening in New Japan. There's a lot of ton that's not happening in New Japan, which is almost a bigger story, but we'll do a deep dive on New Japan and kind of go through that as we move on. The G1 I think the G1 will be almost over by that time, but we'll see. And thanks a lot for everyone who's been listening, and we will see you in a couple weeks.